Good evening, parents, carers and community members. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. And this is our last webinar of the Lent term, so I'm really not sure where the time does go. I hope you're all well. So before I introduce our wonderful speaker this evening, just want to remind you, we're not expecting any technical difficulties, even though I did have one earlier with my camera. That's why I'm slightly blurry, but I hope you can hear me okay. But if there's any technical difficulties, please do bear with us and I'll jump right on. I will be sharing in due course the Trinity webinars, and that will come out in the Parent Carer Bulletin before the spring break. So this webinar this evening is focused on how to be present and connect with your child or children when time is limited. I know as a parent that when I'm going to be listening to our speaker this evening, I'll be making lots of notes. So a little bit more about our wonderful speaker. So Anita is an award-winning parenting speaker. She's a writer and she's a coach who supports working parents to balance successful careers with being a parent carer. And that's exactly why I'll be taking some notes as well. Anita speaks at events for working parents and carers across the UK and internationally, and delivers webinars for working parents and carers at top global companies. And her books have been translated into 13 languages, so it just shows the scale of her influence and her work. Her first book, The Work, Parent Switch, known as the Working Parent Survival Guide that I need to buy, outlines how working parents and carers can use the bits of time left over when work is done to parent and care smarter, not harder, and be the parent and carer their child needs. And her most recent book, How to Get Your Teenager Out of Their Bedroom, came out to 5-star reviews in September 2024. I have got that one. It's just on the shelf with some of my others that I need to get through. Anita was recently named in the Times as one of the top 5 parenting coaches in the UK, and she's regularly featured in the media, including well-known names and companies and organisations such as BBC, CNBC and The Telegraph. And she's currently appearing as an expert in the Series 2 of At Home with Catherine Ryan. She's accredited Triple P parenting facilitator, and she's been working for parents and carers for over 20 years on all aspects of children's and young people's behaviour and well-being. She has a postgraduate qualification in developmental psychology and a talent for helping parents and carers step back and reflect on parent-carer-child dynamics and implementing small changes that make a big difference. So we are really in great company, although that's online, with someone that is really going to give us fantastic insight. When I came across Anita, I generally thought, she's way too highbrow to want to speak at a school, especially and at Forest, but she has been so accommodating, and I think it's been agreed that we're definitely going to get Anita back so she becomes an extended part of the Forest family. So without further ado, I'm going to welcome Anita. Have a wonderful evening.
Oh, thank you, Natasha. What a wonderful introduction. Yes, the topic today, how to be present and connect with your children when time is limited. So a lot of this session is really about your children. It's about you, and it's about how you manage to show up as a parent, even when you're tired, your energy levels are low, your mind is wearing with thoughts, and it's not easy necessarily to do that. So a lot of this session is really about you. I don't need to introduce myself because that was just a fabulous introduction. Thank you. If you want to connect with me, find out more about me, there's a QR code on the screen there you're welcome to use. That will also help you navigate to my blog. So I write a parenting advice blog called Thinking Parenting, and there's lots and lots of the things I'm going to say today. You'll find follow-up resources on there that you can have a look at as well. But do feel free, do connect. I share lots of free materials for parents. There's some ideas on the screen there of examples of articles you'll find on my blog that I think you might find helpful when it comes to this particular topic. So let's get going. What are we going to talk about today? So we're going to talk just a really little bit about why connection matters. I'm not going to linger on that because I'm pretty sure you all know that it matters to turn up and connect with your children. I don't think you need convincing about that. I think the bit that is more interesting is, why is it hard? What gets in the way? What are the obstacles to connecting, especially when you're a working parent? And how do we overcome those obstacles? So most of the session is really thinking about, what might we be able to do differently to help us show up and connect? And that includes really thinking about how we define parenting, what it is that we're trying to achieve as parents, and thinking about parenting as something that we do in the small moments rather than it being the big things that we do. You've got to think about how we show up at either at the end of the day or whenever it is that you see your kids, how we are actually, how we can get ourselves into the right frame of mind to connect and to parent in that kind of connecting and present way. What do we need to do with our mindset, the helpful habits we can have that will help us sort of set ourselves up to succeed on that? I will talk a bit about listening in particular, because sometimes connection just happens in very simple conversations. So we're going to have a little think, and I will drill down onto a conversation, an imaginary one, a model one, about how we listen in a connecting way. And I am going to talk a little bit about playfulness. Now, I know I often feel like, there's a sense of dread when I talk to parents about play, because if you have younger ones, often we feel guilty about not playing with our kids enough. And I don't want you to feel guilty. That's not what I'm trying to achieve. Those of you who've got older kids might be thinking, well, yeah, great, but my kids don't actually want to spend any time with me. So it's almost like the opposite problem. What I'm going to talk about is playfulness, and why playfulness really matters when it comes to connection. So just enjoying our family life. And at the end, I'll just talk a very little bit about connecting when you can't be there, because there are always trade-offs in parenting. There are always times when we can't be there, even though we want to be, and perhaps ways that we can bridge that those divides or bridge those absences. If you've got a question, I am really happy if you're watching this live. If you've got a question at any point, please pop it in the comment box. And at the end, I will have a check in there. If there are any questions whatsoever, I will answer them. So feel free. I don't want anybody to go away if you're watching live having a burning question and not asking it. So please do that. And we'll do all of those at the end. Right, let's get started. As I said, I'm not going to dwell too much on this bit in terms of why connection is important. I'm sure you're aware that longitudinal research on children's development really clearly demonstrates that one of the very best predictors for successful, positive outcomes for children, so things like their happiness, their social, their emotional development, relationships, even their academic success and their future career success, those positive outcomes are influenced by whether or not they develop security from having at least one loving caregiver who shows up and connects with them. So it particularly, we talk about attachment. Attachment is something that we often think about happening in the very early years, and it's true, it does happen then, but it's something that we continually work on and renew with our children. And it influences in those early years, it influences brain development, children's development of their skills, their neural pathways are sort of laid down in the context of being in a relationship with a loving caregiver. But also with older children, with teenagers, connection and attachment helps us stay close to them, even when perhaps things are not ideal, because some teens do take quite a rocky road through the teenage years. They do make mistakes, they get things wrong, they experience difficulties, and we can't always take those away. But having a good relationship means that we can stay close to them and we can influence them. So our connection helps our children to regulate. When we are calm and regulated and connected with our kids, that enables them to find their calm a little bit quicker. And it also builds their self-esteem, because you feel loved. When you feel like someone cares about you, it makes you feel good about yourself. You feel like, well, I must be worth loving. I must be worth caring about. So connection really underpins really good emotional and mental health for our children in a really rounded way. But I guess the question is, given that you know this already, and I know this, what is it that gets in the way? To have a think about that. If you're watching live and you feel like sharing, please do share. But more than anything, I want you to think about it. Why is it that I sometimes get to the end of the evening and I feel like, oh, you know what? I didn't really connect with my kids. What is it that's getting in the way? It's quite important to think about that if you're going to work out how to overcome that. So be honest with yourself. And when I ask that question of parents, there are some typical answers that I tend to get, because connecting is not as easy as it sounds. It's easy for me to make it sound simple, but it isn't. There are lots of barriers, especially for working parents, when it comes to making connection happen. Because connecting with our kids requires us to be mentally and emotionally present. And that is not easy at the end of a day when you've been working hard. And as I said, your energy levels are low and your stress levels are high. And one factor is just time. If you're working long hours, if you're commuting back to the office again, if your children are living across two households, maybe they don't live with you full time, inevitably you have limited time with your children. Even if that's not true and you've got more time, if you've got young children, the fact is adults and children's schedules don't line up very well. Children often do activities after school. They go to bed early if they're young. And all of those factors can really squeeze the opportunities that we have in the terms of in our evenings. The time can just feel very tight. And when we get to the evening, working parents are usually operating on quite reduced energy levels. We're seldom at our best, are we, at the end of the day? There's so much to do in the evening. It's not like that's it, we get to relax. In addition to taking care of children, we've got all the life admin, family admin to do. There's dinner to make, there's clothes to wash, there's lost PE kit to find, there's homework to help with, or bath time, bedtime. It can feel like a really endless list of tasks. And the temptation is to kind of rush through the evening just trying to get it all done, and maybe delaying the connecting with our children. It's like, no, not now. I'll do that later. When I finish this, then I'll play with you, or then I'll connect with the kids. And I think modern parents in particular are very vulnerable to this, partly because we're more likely, to be working, but also because there's a real intensification of parenting that has happened over the last several decades. Modern parents are really bombarded with all the stuff that we have to do if we're going to be considered good parents, or if we're going to judge ourselves as good parents. It can feel like that job description is absolutely huge, that our children's success or failure is a direct result of our success or failure as parents. We need to make sure they eat their vegetables, they must play a musical instrument, preferably chess as well. Plus they've got to do sport, they've got to be kind, they've got to be happy, they've got to be a good friend, we have to read with them, they've got to do well at school. The list goes on and on and on. And because we want to be good parents, it matters to us. We love our children. We want to be good parents. We can end up getting a bit distracted by that stuff. And we kind of pour more energy into kind of, ferrying them from place to place, or club to club, or cajoling them to practice their violin when they don't really want to, or to do their homework, or to eat their broccoli, or clean their teeth, or whatever it is that we're judging ourselves on. And we put more energy into that than into connecting with them and building a relationship. It's like those performance metrics, those badges of success as a parent have become so big and important that they've squeezed out the time to do the actually really important stuff. And I think being a working parent, they're even more likely to do this, because when you're at work, when adults are focused on a task at work, we tend to do a lot of what I call in my book efficiency thinking. So it's the type of thinking when we're focused on a goal, we're thinking, right, we've got to deliver that project, or I've got to deliver that piece of work, or complete that task. And in order to do that, I need to do this, this, and this. I need to do it in this order. I need to do it by then, on budget. And our brains are really future focused. And we're using, the reason I'm pointing at the front of my head is because we're using a lot of our executive functions, which are housed in our prefrontal cortex in the brain. And these are the things that help us plan, be organized, not get distracted, and really focus on goals. That type of thinking, that efficient thinking, helps us a lot of work. It means we deliver and we get things done. Brilliant. However, that type of thinking isn't really very helpful when it comes to connecting with children. And there's a good reason for that, because that part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, those executive functions, are really the last part of the brain that get finally kind of wired up. Until late adolescence does that part of the brain really come online and get kind of wired up with the rest of the brain. And that's not because children's brains are, defunct, or, not working. That's because children have got a different job to do. They don't need to get stuff done. They need to build their brains. And in order to build your brain as a child, you don't want to be focused and blinkered. You want to be distractible. You want to be getting maximum stimulation from the world around you, from your experiences, because it's through your experiences, it's through interacting with the world that you build your brain, all of that knowledge and skills that children need. So children are naturally much more distractible, much more in the moment. They're kind of like, oh, this is how I feel right now. I need a wee, and I'm bored, or whatever's going on for them right now at this moment. So if we approach them in our kind of right, 2 steps ahead, we've got to get this done, this, we sort of never really get on the same wavelength with them, because they are, even though sometimes it feels like they can be focused on something, quite often they get distracted along the way and don't necessarily kind of actually stay focused on it. But we miss the moment if we take that efficiency thinking, that efficiency mindset home. So what do we do about that? It's like we're set up to fail by work. We're kind of, by being an adult, we're not quite in the right zone to connect with kids. So what I'm going to invite you to do, I'm really going to invite you to reframe how you think about parenting, and to reframe what your success criteria are as a parent, and think about how you can use those little moments that you have with your child, and start to define parenting success not as delivering on deliverables, but as building relationship. That if we see relationship building as the central point of parenting, as our overall goal and aim, as the most important thing that we can do as parents, then we're much more likely to give it our energy and to, manage to do that of the evening. So what I'm asking you to do is kind of to redefine parenting a little bit and to think about parenting not a series of tasks that you complete. I know it feels that way sometimes. Not as a project that you're managing. I am delivering a good child, or I am raising a good child. I don't really even want you to see parenting as something you're in control of, because I think that's a bit of an illusion. That we've been told we're very, very important as parents. And don't get me wrong, as parents, carers, of course, we influence our children's lives hugely. But we're not in control of what happens to them. And it's quite scary. We just look at recent history. You look at, COVID, the things that happened in children's lives then that we couldn't control, the things that can happen in any child's life, we can't control the challenges that they might have. Parenting isn't something where we manage it all. It's not even really a skill that we get good at. We've been told, this is an entire industry of which I'm a part that tries to sell you ideas of how to parent, as if parenting is something we do to children, that children are moldable, like they're pieces of clay that if we do things right, they will turn out right. And yet it's not quite as simple as that, because children come to us with a set of genetics, with a temperament, a personality. Things will happen to them in their lives. And actually, parenting isn't something we do to children. Parenting happens in the space between an adult and a child. And how you behave influences your child. But equally, how they behave influences your parenting. If you were lucky enough to have a lovely, placid, calm baby, you probably felt quite like unstressed and like a good parent at the time. Whereas if you had a very irritable, sensitive baby who tended to react a lot to what was going on around them, you probably felt like parenting was harder work. And you got good at being the parent for your child. But then another child came along, perhaps if you've got more than one, and you realize, oh my goodness, all those things I learned, they don't necessarily work with this child. Or your child went through another stage of development and things didn't seem the same anymore. Parenting is a relationship. It happens in that space between us and them. It's evolving. It's not a one-way process that we parent a child. It's a dynamic and it's influenced by them. And I would really, on the one hand, that can feel a little bit scary because we aren't in control. But on the other hand, I think that's quite liberating, because if we say to ourselves, you know what, every single decision I make is not so very, very important. What matters is connection or relationship. Because in the end, whatever happens to your child, and I said, with teenagers, for example, some of them take a difficult path through life. They maybe don't make great choices. But if we stay close to them, what we really have is the privilege, not of molding our children, but of walking through life with them on that journey. And I do consider that a real privilege. And if we have a good relationship, we have the potential to influence them. We don't get to choose the path or which paths they have on offer, but we do get to have a relationship in which we can guide and we can be the positive part of their story. So I'd invite you to think about what you're trying to achieve in a different way, because I think if you could set yourself the goal every evening of doing one thing builds relationship with your child. And if at the end of the evening you can look back and think and identify, what did you do? And it might be something very small. It might be a cuddle. It might be a smile. It might be sharing a joke, a shared moment, a conversation. But if that's your goal and you can get to the end of the evening and go, I did one thing that built relationship, we can feel successful as parents and we can put we can grow that desire to have relationship with our children. Yeah, I hope that helpful as a bit of a rephrase. Obviously, that still leads us to the problem of how do we actually put that into practice at the end of a tough day of work. And the first thing we need to do is we need to manage our mindset. We need to put ourselves in the right frame of mind. And that means consciously dialing down that efficiency mindset and dialing up the strengths that we need for connection. Things like acceptance, curiosity, empathy, and playfulness. So stepping down our to-do list and marching through our to-do list and actually stepping up some of those positive and connecting strengths so that we can be in the moment with our children. How do we do that? Well, I think the first thing that's important is to be intentional. I think having a good transition routine between work and parenting is really helpful. And a good transition routine, you might do it if you're commuting on your commute. You might do it sitting on a bench outside school before you pick your kids up. You might do it, sitting in the car before you walk in the house. But a transition routine is something that just, number one, checks in with yourself. How am I doing? Am I hungry and thirsty? How stressed am I feeling? What's going on in my head? I know I'm terrible at not eating lunch or drinking enough during the day. And I know that if I walk through the door stressed, hungry, and thirsty, I'm much more likely to snap at my children or my partner. So if I've got my head full of work thoughts, I'm far less likely to pay attention to them. So about checking in with yourself and then doing something about that, whether that is stopping and getting a drink or dealing with stress by saying, okay, I'm just going to sit preferably on a bench in the sunshine, or I'm just going to sit and breathe for a minute. Even I'm going to do a 2-minute mindfulness kind of meditation on an app before I go to meet my children. Or what if your head is whirring with thoughts about work? Grab your phone and just talk at it. I'm a big one for voice messages. Just talk at your phone. Everything that's going on in my head, everything I need to remember, all of my work stuff. Right, that's everything out of my head. Send it to yourself for tomorrow, for the next time you need to parent. Park it out of your head and then do something really important. And I'd invite you to do this with me. Yeah, it's not going to hurt you at all. It'll be fun, I promise. So close your eyes. And obviously you're not going to do this if you're driving on your commute, but if you're sitting on that bench or sitting in the car, wherever it is, close your eyes and think about your child, or both of them, or however many you've got. Pick one, whichever one you're going to pick up at that time. Doesn't really matter. Visualize their face. In your mind's eye, really conjure up your child. You could even think about, what do they feel like to cuddle? You could use a happy memory. If you find visualization difficult, use an actual specific happy memory and really linger on it. Bring it to mind. This will only take about 30 seconds to do. And once you've got that picture of them in your mind, I want you to look at it. I want you to take a deep breath. And I want you to smile. When we think about our children in that way, it summons up all of those positive emotions and loving feelings that we have for our children. And we step into our parent selves. And suddenly what we're feeling is love for our children. And if you can imagine walking through the door in the evening or picking your children up wherever you're reconnecting with them, already thinking, my goodness, I love my kids. Can't wait to see them. Then you're in a much better frame of mind to connect with them. So if you're working up from home, then you might need to actually invent a bit of a commute ritual. you might do that in your home office as you close your laptop, or it might be something that you do walking around the block. But find a little bit of a buffer to reset. And then at the beginning of the evening, I want you to start with 15 minutes of stillness. Now, I've said 15. To be honest, if you can only do 5, that will help. 5 minutes of stillness. And by that, what I mean is if you were to walk in the house, I want you to sit on the sofa. I don't want you to rush to start doing all of those other jobs. I want you to sit down, be where your child is, just watching them, listening to them. If they're little, they might come and talk to you, give you a cuddle. They might ignore you, but you can just kind of watch them. You could do that on that bench outside school. It's going to be a popular bench, this one. But a little moment of stillness to see your children just completes that sense of, okay, I'm in mum mode now, or dad mode now. I'm in carer mode. I'm summoning up those feelings. And it means that, yes, you'll still have 100 things to do that evening. Hopefully, there'll be a conversation with your kids. There'll be some little moment of connection. And it could be, if your kids are younger, it's a moment of play. It could be you're just sitting down watching whatever your teenager's watching on the telly and joining in. And it might be something funny. Just kind of having a shared experience with them. But by doing 5, 10, 15 minutes of stillness at the beginning of the evening, yes, you'll still need to go off and do the other jobs, but you'll get up and do that in a very different frame of mind. And you will have done the most important thing you need to do in your evening first, not last. And then it's not about, not now, I'm busy. It's like, yeah, I already remember who you are. We've already done connecting. Actually, I've done it first, not last. And we've prioritized that above the stuff, the paraphernalia of being a parent. You can use play if you've got younger children. I'm going to come back to play in a moment when I talk about playfulness. But what I'm really talking about here is prioritizing the small moments with our children. The temptation when you're a working parent, especially if you've got a teenager and maybe they've been in their bedroom a lot and you haven't really seen them, you've got home, you're running around doing things, they come out of their room, they come down the stairs and you're like, right, there you are. I haven't seen you for 24 hours. These are all the bits of parenting I need to do. Have you done your homework? Have you tidied your room? Have you, phoned your grandmother? Whatever it is that's on your list. That's quite alienating. It tends to mean that teens are even less likely to come and want to spend time with us. But it's not really connecting. Sometimes the best investment we can do is to build rapport. So maybe if your teenager does wander into the kitchen and starts raiding the fridge, before dinner or whenever it is, rather than jumping on that moment to parent them, actually sharing a joke, an observation, telling them something happened during your day. Actually something, a little micro bridge, a little micro moment of, yeah, it's me, it's you, I like you, rather than have you done. Those small little bits of time are really important. With younger children, it might be them coming to you. It might be, mum, dad, look at this, or answer this question. They might make a bid for your attention. If they do that, always try to respond to that bid, because it's them saying, I want a little piece of you right now. And if you're busy, which I know you are, most of the time, if we're honest, we could probably stop for a few minutes and give them a little bit of attention. Even if you're cooking, it's kind of like, okay, look at the picture that they're trying to show you, answer the question that they're asking you, and give them a minute of your time. And they'll then quite often just kind of get on with what they were doing, but really respond to those moments, because what it signals is availability, that they are a priority. Try not to always be saying, not now, I'm busy. There will be times when you are, there are times when you're not. Make sure you stop and respond. And don't rely on questions to connect. What did you do at school today? Because we all know that's not going to get a good bit of connection from a child. They're going to be, I don't know, can't remember, nothing. it was boring, whatever. But they're probably not going to give you a nice long conversation. A much better strategy, you talk about your day. You walk in and you go, oh, tell you what I did today. Oh, I had this for lunch. I saw this really funny thing today. Oh, I'm a bit grumpy today. I'm really tired. I worked so hard today. Whatever it is, age appropriately, chat, share your experiences. And that models to them. That's what we do. We tell people that we love what we've been up to and be affectionate. I know teens don't always want you to be affectionate, but a really good habit you can get into is to set up traditions. Um, Traditions, if you're a working parent or if you're a very time poor parent, are your best friend. So a tradition is simply something you do again and again. So it might be a kind of a daily ritual, something you do every single day. It might be something you do every week. On Saturday, we always go swimming, or on Sunday, we always have pancakes, whatever. Friday, we always do movie night. It could be something you do less regularly, but particularly things that you do every week or so, or every day. Repetition creates resonance. Now, I still remember the phrase that my dad used to use to say good nights to me. My dad was a very busy working parent. He travelled a lot. He definitely was not there every time I went to bed as a child. But every time he was there, he said good night in the same way. And it's still, even now, thinking about it, I can feel those positive emotions inside. Because when we repeat things, it's like every other time we've done that comes rushing into that moment. So traditions and rituals take up way more space psychologically than the amount of time that they take. And they stitch together absences that even if he hadn't been there to put me to bed for a week, he said it again and then all was well with the world because that reminded me of all the other times he had been there. So really think about how you can use repetition and rituals, doing things again and again and again, whether that's watching sport, playing sport together at a weekend, things that you can repeat. They're really helpful when it comes to kind of, creating that resonance. And they might just take a few seconds to do. They don't have to always be the really big things. Right, I said I would talk about listening because I think this is really important. One of the most important ways that we build connection is by listening really well. And one of the ways we kind of break connection is by doing what I call fix it listening. So fix it listening, when you're at work and maybe a colleague comes to you and they're like, oh, I've got a problem. This is the situation. What they want is fix it listening. They want a definite answer. They want a solution to the problem. They want your suggestions. When children interact with us, the purpose of their communication is very different. Children are not looking to us for answers. They're not looking to us to solve their problems. They want to have conversations that help them understand the situation that they're in better. Maybe to understand their emotion better or to accept their emotion, feel like it's okay. They don't need to be given answers. They need to be helped to find their own answers. So the biggest thing we need to do is to hold back suggestions. And that's really hard, especially when we're in kind of efficiency mode and our children have a problem. Maybe they're distressed about something, or it looks really obvious to us how to solve this problem. The temptation is to jump in. They say, I have a problem or I feel bad. And we say, don't feel bad, do this. Here's your answer. That's not really a connecting conversation. That closes a conversation down. Listening for connection is all about opening up a conversation. It's not about changing their emotions. It's not about fixing their problem. It's about sitting with them, with that problem for a moment and exploring it with them. So coaching rather than telling and really validating their thoughts and feelings along the way. I know that sounds a little bit abstract. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk you through an actual kind of example. for that. And this one is lifted from my book, from the Work Parent Switch. Now, it may be a situation or a problem that's familiar to some of you, but it might be one that you haven't had, but there'll be a version that you've experienced which will be similar to this. So in this conversation, the parent says, "What's the matter? Why are you upset?" So we're doing quite well. We've noticed they're upset. "Ellie was nasty to me." "What did she do?" "She said I have hair like a bear." So I would argue that we've got two basic directions we can go as parents, as carers, with this conversation. Option one is tempting, it's short, it makes us feel like we've done our job. And that's to say, some version of "don't be silly, you have lovely hair. Just ignore her, or tell the teacher, or don't play with her," whatever your advice would be. But it's like, "Nope, that's not right. Reassure, this is the answer, this is what you should do." Now, I'm not saying that's the worst thing in the world you could do, but I do think there is a more connecting conversation that you could have. And you know what? It doesn't take that much longer. Okay. And option two is a lot better in terms of connection. So option two goes like this. "Well, okay, that wasn't very nice. How did that make you feel?" So option two is about opening up the conversation with curiosity. "Well, I feel sad. I can understand that. It's not nice when people say nasty things." So we're accepting, we're validating that response. "Why do you think she said it?" So we're being curious. We're trying to explore this rather than getting rid of this. "Because I have curly hair. Is there something wrong with having curly hair?" So what we're trying to do is understand how our child is thinking and feeling. We're not telling her how to see the world. We're trying to work out how she is seeing it. "Ellie has straight hair." "Oh, so you think she said it because your hair is different from hers." We're reflecting back, we're summarising what she said to us, but we haven't got it quite right, which is why reflecting and summarising is really helpful to do. "She said it to be unkind." "Oh, she said it to be unkind. Well, I'm not surprised you're upset. Have you got any ideas what you could do about it?" So at the end, we're not even offering solutions then, we're prompting independent problem solving. Now, I would argue this is a connecting conversation, not because it takes longer, but because the child's concerns and emotions are accepted and explored. They're not dismissed. There's no suggestions going into this. There's lots of clarifying questions. And our child goes away feeling understood, feeling like they probably understand the world a little bit better. We go away actually having met their need for comfort, but also closer to them. But we've had a little window into what's going on with them. The time difference is minimal. This does not take that much longer. And I am not saying that you're going to do option two every single time. You're not, because sometimes you are just going to do option one, the quick version. But the more you notice the opportunity to do option two, the more you notice that you did do option one, the more likely you are to find the moments when you go, "Okay, stop and listen here," rather than hurrying through this conversation. So even if we just do that conversation a few more times than we would have done, the impact on connection is really big. And I would say if you have older children, if you have teenagers, it is especially important that we react to them in this way and that we listen in this way and that we treat them as the experts in the situations that they're facing. Because teens are very quick to react and be defensive when we try and give them advice. But when we do this, they often feel like we've understood them and we've helped them work their own way through a problem. So give it a go. See if you can find an opportunity to have that type of conversation. Right, I said I would talk about playfulness, and I said I was feeling wary about that because I know that sometimes when I talk about play, it just makes parents feel guilty because not all of us enjoy playing with our children. And you know what? That's okay, because we are not children anymore. We are not driven to build our brains. We know that the dinosaurs don't go in the farm, and we're not that interested in the Barbies or whatever it is. There's lots of reasons why we don't necessarily enjoy playing. It's okay. What I'm not saying here is that you must play with your child in a way that they like. What I am saying is that a spirit of playfulness is really helpful for connection. Without playfulness, frankly, parenting is an awful lot of drudgery. There's an awful lot of stuff that just needs doing every single day, again and again. And it's, there's a lot of stuff like that if we take the playfulness out. And playfulness is like, it's the opposite of that efficiency thinking. It gets squeezed out by that efficiency mode, by the mental load, by everything that we carry that we have to think about, by that overscheduling, by tech, by stuff. But it's also the antidote to those things. It's a little bit like, when you've got no energy and you think, oh, I can't be bothered to go to the gym or go for a run or swim or whatever it is you do as exercise. But then you do it, and then afterwards, bizarrely, you feel energized. Playfulness is like that. It's a little bit magic, that it gives energy to us when we're genuinely playful. Now, playful is not the same as playing. Playfulness is not the same as sitting down on the floor and reluctantly, resentfully shuffling Lego pieces around. That's not playful. Playfulness is when we get into the spirit of play. It's when we are enjoying ourselves. It's when we're in that state of flow where we're not really thinking about time. We are enjoying ourselves. We're having fun. We are in the moment. And when we can be in the moment doing something we enjoy with our child, we forget about time. We tune into them. We connect with them. And really magic things happen. And I know if you've got older kids, you're thinking, well, my kids don't play in the same way anymore. Playfulness kind of changes as you get older, or as kids get older. It might not be, playing games, but with a teenager who likes adventure sports, playfulness could be doing a zip wire, having fun, doing a high ropes course, doing something that you're fully engaged with, that you are fully in the moment, fully enjoying. It's something that you enjoy and that hopefully your child is enjoying too. And when we get into the little zone, it's magic. Number one, we feel great. Our well-being goes up because this is like mindfulness incarnate. Yep, I'm having fun. I feel wonderful. I'm in the present. We tune into our children because we're doing something with them. We read their signals. We build on their suggestions, their mood, their ideas. They look at us, and the fact that we're enjoying ourselves, it's like it leaks out of us in our body language, and they're like, wow, Dad's having fun. I must be a fun person to be with. Their self-esteem goes up. They feel good about themselves. It deepens relationship. Playfulness is like that really magic ingredient, and I think everybody has to find their own way to get that. If you're really lucky, there's something that you and your child both enjoy doing. Maybe you enjoy kicking a ball around together. Sometimes you have to work a little bit to find those things, but it's always worth trying to find those things, because those little moments of mutual playfulness and enjoyment are like pixie dust for connection. If you can do it every day, 5 minutes, wow, wouldn't that be amazing? But even if you do it less regularly, have a little audit and think, are we getting some playfulness together? And if not, what might I like to try? Playfulness might be cooking together. It's not always the raucous, fun things. It's about enjoying and being in the moment. So it can be quieter. It doesn't have to be, the big loud stuff. It could be stuff that you do quietly together, that you are doing it jointly and both enjoying yourselves. So have to think about that. I'm going to finish very soon. If you are watching live and you've got a question, do put a question into the comments and I will have a look at that at the end. Before I finish, I just wanted to mention about connecting even when you can't be there. Because as I said, there are always trade-offs as a parent. There'll always be times when you can't be there. Young children really like using familiar objects to bridge absence, but actually sometimes teenagers do too. Certainly when I was a teen and my dad was doing a lot of traveling, I used to steal his t-shirt and sleep in it as part of my pajamas. Used to really annoy him. Really, it was a very simple way of feeling like he was still present. So try to remember that sometimes, teens can also act a little bit like younger children. But those traditions and rituals that I talked about, that repetition will really help. If you are only seeing your children every other weekend, for example, being able to look forward to what it is that you do on Saturdays, being able to talk about it, being able to talk about what you did last time, being able to plan that together, it bridges that absence. And you might do that through technology. It might be through phone or text, or it might be through some kind of FaceTime or video call. If you have to be away, you can do those, but it's about children engaging in them. I'm not suggesting that we kind of substitute genuine connection with text, but if you can't see your child and actually sending them a little message that says, thinking about you, that's a bit of connection. That's basically a little bit of a reaching out. And that's not the same as texting them when they're upstairs to tell them that dinner's ready. I mean something that actually says, right now, I'm thinking about you. Sometimes that's sending them a silly picture of the dog that just goes, I'm thinking about you. If you have to be away for a special moment, what you might be able to plan to kind of make them feel like you thought about them. And, depending on their age, that might be, you could even record a bedtime story if you've got a little one. It could be giving them a note in their lunchbox. It could be, and I've done this one myself, definitely kind of saying, I can't get home tonight. I'm really sorry, but I tell you what, I've ordered you a pizza. It's on its way. I'm thinking about you. Especially when they had kind of exam revision going on and I knew that they needed a little bit of kind of a moment to de-stress, or hiding a present for them to find it and sending them clues. But think about how you bridge absence if you can't be there. It is possible to do, but sometimes it takes a little bit of time and effort. Right. What are the things I want you to take away? I'm hoping you're all going to take away that invitation to redefine parenting, not as a series of tasks or a set of goals, really as an act of relationship building. And if you're going to judge yourself at the end of the day as a parent, and I'm not encouraging you to do that, but if you're going to, as we all do, judge yourself on, did I do one thing that built relationship? Not, did I perform to those kind of metrics of what I'm constantly being told counts as a good parent? And really use intentional habits, routines, and rituals to switch out of work mode and dial up that kind of those positive feelings. Put yourself in the right place to connect. You don't have to be perfect at any of this. Even connecting just a little bit more. Sometimes, especially when teens are in their kind of like the only thing that matters is my friends moment, sometimes it is really tiny little moments, but they are still precious. Those little micro bridges can really sustain you when perhaps, you're not getting to do stuff together as much as you used to. And focus on listening, not to fix it, not to tell them what to do, not to advise them, but to hold a space in which you explore something together. That's a connecting conversation. Try to make space for playfulness, whatever that looks like for you and your family. Try to connect when you're not there, but more than anything, just prioritize quality moments. You can't measure parenting in hours and minutes, but quality moments are what build relationship, and that's really what we're trying to achieve. I hope you found that helpful. As I said at the beginning, There's lots more resources on my website, on my blog. You can use the QR code to navigate there. If there's different categories for parents and carers of teenagers, for younger ones, on play and co-parenting, and on children's mental health. So lots there to support you. I can't see any comments or questions in the chat, so I'm hoping that means you're all really busy thinking about what I've said and that you will be taking that away. So it just remains for me to wish you good luck with that. I really hope you manage to put some of that into practice, and hopefully I will be back again delivering another session later in the year. So everybody take care.